Okay, welcome everyone to the September 22nd, 2020 Open Planetary Lunch Talk. I'm Chase, I have some lunch. Our speaker today is Olivier Vitaf, and he will be speaking about the JUICE mission. Thank you for being here, Olivier, and when you're ready, just begin presenting.
Okay, thanks, Chase. So do you see my screen, my first slide?
Yes, we see it.
Yes.
Okay, so I will start. So thanks for the invitation to this lunch or dinner talk. That depends where you are. And it's nice to see some of you that I know, like Nicolas, Santa also. So I was asked to present the JUICE mission with a particular focus on the archive and data. It's quite unusual for me to give a status report that includes the archive because, as you will see, as you may know, with respect to the schedule, we arrive in the Jupiter system only late 2029. So the archive will be really something operational in 10 years from now. So it's a little bit weird for me to talk about that. But since this is the audience of this network, I prepared a few slides to discuss what we do in terms of archive, and if you have any feedback about that, that will be quite interesting. I think it's always good to start the archive in advance. Usually, people they complain that we start too early, that we don't need to work about that now. But I think it's never too early to speak and to prepare the archive, and I think Baptiste will not object to that. But before I go to that, I will present you an overview of this mission. That you already see the poster here on this first slide. So you see the design of the spacecraft, and in the background you see already the targets of the mission. So you see Jupiter in the background with the four Galilean moons, and we are mainly interested in the three icy moons, which are Europa in the middle, Callisto on the right, and Ganymede on the first. And I will explain you why we are interested in these bodies. So before I go into more detail, this is an illustration of the scientific topics of the mission. So you see here Jupiter in the middle, an illustration of the radiation environment and the magnetosphere, where the moons are embedded. So we have two major scientific topics that were used to sell the mission, and this is how the mission was accepted. I think it made a big impact into the community, not only planetary but also other communities. So the first topic is to study habitable worlds around the gas giant. So in other words, do we have any places or regions around a giant planet which include interesting conditions for life? That does not mean there is life, but at least there is the possibility of life to have started or to start later. That we call that habitability, and we are in particular interested by Ganymede, which is the largest moon in the solar system. Europa, we are very also interested because that's a very interesting target for astrobiology due to the peculiarity of the internal subsurface ocean. And to complete the picture, we'll study the Callisto, which is almost as big as Ganymede, but very different. And it will be very interesting to compare these three moons and to understand the habitable conditions around a gas giant, because those conditions might be different from one moon to another one. So to study this habitability and the environment of these moons, we don't study those moons in isolation. We are going to study the full system, because it's important to understand the big picture, not to see only one moon or another one. So that's why we are also studying Jupiter. And the topic here is an archetype for gas giant. It's also very interesting in the context of exoplanet, because Jupiter is one example of exoplanet class. And in this topic, under this topic, we are going to study the Jovian atmosphere, the Jovian magnetosphere, and all the other satellites and ring system, which will complete the picture of the full Jupiter system. And an illustration as to why it's important to study everything together is illustrated here, where you see you You may know very well this image from the Hubble Space Telescope. This shows an aurora on the north pole of Jupiter. So we see the auroral here, the oval here. And to illustrate the complex and subtle link or connection between the Jupiter planet magnetosphere and the moon itself, we see here the auroral spots due to Io, and two other spots due to Callisto, to Europa and Ganymede on this picture. We are not shown on this picture. It's the Callisto spot, which was discovered not so long ago based on archival images. So these spots of the auroral activity due to the moon illustrate, in fact, that there is a connection between the moon and Jupiter. And if you want to understand the environment of the moon, we need also to study the giant planet in the middle. Before I give more information on those bodies, so the moons and so on, I give you the schedule here of the mission, just to give you an idea about how patient we have to be when we deal with planetary missions. So in March 2007, there was the ESA call for proposal for a large mission in the program Cosmic Vision. It took 5 years to be selected. It was very complex due to the collaboration with NASA and some scientific and technical challenges associated with this mission. So it took 5 years for the mission to be selected. It was a very tough competition. Then 1 year later, we have selected the payload. 2 years later, we have selected the prime industry, which built the spacecraft. We aim for a launch in May, June 2022 from Kourou with possibly the last Ariane 5. It will take 7.5 years to reach Jupiter. And then we'll spend 2.5 years around Jupiter, making some flybys of Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. And at the end of the mission, for the remaining 9-10 months, or hopefully more, we'll enter in orbit around Ganymede and orbit around this moon and to study it in detail. I put here possibly end of mission, but that's really a baseline, and we hope that the spacecraft will be still healthy at that time, that we will still have some propellant in the tank, and that we can continue a little bit further. So for Europa, so it's one of the target of the mission. We are going to make 2 flybys of Europa, only 2, because Europa is close to Jupiter, and the radiation environment is not very good for the spacecraft. So we are given the radiation environment and the requirement in terms of radiation dose, we can only afford to prepare 2 flybys. But otherwise, during those 2 flybys, we'll study the moon, and in particular, possible active places underneath the surface, liquid water, the icy crust with the radar. And the idea is to understand why this moon, which here showed no crater, so that means a very active moon, very young surface, what are the conditions for habitability underneath this crust. So only 2 flybys, but that will be a very interesting set of measurements from JUICE. Ganymede, the largest moon of the solar system, will be the primary target of the mission. So it's possibly less interesting in terms of astrobiology, but in terms of planetary body, it's a very special target and very interesting, and I think it will bring many surprises, in my opinion. First is the biggest moon in the solar system, so it's like a mini planet. We see many craters on the surface, so that means the moon is less active in principle than Europa. But still, we can probably later during the mission see some sign of activities. We have to see that. We have good evidence that there is liquid water underneath the surface. So inside this moon, there is more liquid water than on our own Earth. And the last important aspect is that it's a moon with a magnetic field, so internal magnetic field. And if you consider rocky bodies, there are only three bodies that possess internal magnetic field: is the Earth, Mercury, and Ganymede. So that makes this moon quite interesting, and I'm sure we will get some interesting finding from that. And the last object we are going to compare in terms of icy moons is with Callisto, so heavily cratered. So that means the surface has not changed over the last 4 billion years. So it's a kind of remnant of the formation of the moons around Jupiter. So it's in principle a dead body from the geological point of view, but there is some evidence, as illustrated here. There is a thin blue layer inside in this artistic view of the interior, and there is a possibility that there is also liquid water. The data from the Galileo mission are kind of ambiguous here, so it's not possible to firmly conclude that there is liquid water, but there is a possibility. And so it will be very interesting to compare the three moons from that point of view, and in particular whether a moon which seems dead can also harbor an internal subsurface ocean. So the result at Callisto will be also quite interesting to see. So if I want to summarize the study of the moon, why it's interesting to have a mission dedicated to the Galilean moon. So if you see the four moons, so Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, if you are interested in ocean moons, that's those three that I just mentioned. If you are interested in rocky moons, it's more Io and Europa. The first three, they are locked into Laplace resonance. That you know, it's also a very special feature of this orbit of these three moons. And in terms of active surface, this is for Io because of the volcanic activity, and Europa with the possible presence of geysers of plume, which is still debated depending on the observation that you are considering. If you are interested in the origin of formation, you have to study Callisto in details because the picture shows the status of the moon as it was 4 billion years ago. If you are interested in how the system works, how the magnetosphere is replenished with energetic particles, you have to study Io and the volcanic activity. If you are interested in habitability, it's more Europa and Ganymede, and we'll see with Callisto what's going on. And if you are interested for search for life, it's more for Europa because there is a particular feature of the ocean which is in contact with a silicate. So you see the moons are quite different, and that will be quite interesting to compare all of them and to understand better the Jupiter system. The moon, as I mentioned, they are embedded into the large and fast rotating Jupiter magnetosphere. So that makes the system quite interesting and quite complex to study from the plasma point of view. They are the magnetic field lines which connect the planet to the moon. And that makes the interaction between the planet and the moon quite interesting, and also the interaction between the moons themselves. So that's also a topic which will be at the heart of the JUICE mission. So how are we going to perform the science that we would like to do? So this is the spacecraft, JUICE spacecraft. I will show you images a bit later. So the peculiarity are the large solar panels. So we are far from the sun, so we need large solar panels of almost 90 square meters. The spacecraft will be 5 tons heavy. More than half will be in fact propellant, because we will have many maneuvers to perform in flight. In terms of payload, here on this top you have an optical bench. Which will include all the remote sensing instruments. So SWI, it's a sub-millimeter wave instrument. We have the laser altimeter here called GALA. We have a camera called Janus. We have an infrared and visible mapping spectrometer, which is called MAGIS. And we have a UV spectrometer called UVS. Here there will be also a star tracker and navigation camera not too far from that. These long booms are the 16-meter boom for the radar antenna. So we have a radar which the goal is to penetrate the ice layers of the 3 icy moons. So 16-meter antenna. We have also a long boom here, 10.5 meters, on which we'll put magnetic field sensors and also radio wave sensors. And we want to have a long boom because we don't want to be disturbed by the spacecraft itself. So we put all these magnetic wave and electric sensors as far as possible from the spacecraft. There are 4 other booms which are 3 meters long, which will be equipped with Langmuir probes to measure electric field and plasma properties. We see 2 of them, one here and one here, but there are 2 others. There are also particle sensors, so for energetic ions, electrons, and neutrals, which are on this side of the spacecraft and also on this side. And finally, we have two antennas, one large and one steerable here, medium, which will be used also, of course, to communicate with Earth and also to be used by the radio science subsystem. And in addition, the telecommunication signal will be also tracked by the very long base interferometry network of radio telescope on Earth. So you see, when we build this spacecraft, we put as much payload as we can because we don't go to Jupiter every year. So when we do such a mission, we put everything we can there. So it's globally a very excellent payload to achieve the goal. Here it's an animation to show an example of what will happen in the system. So once we are around Jupiter, first we'll spend 2.5 years to orbiting Jupiter. So every time we go close to Jupiter, we'll observe it in detail with the particle and field instrument and with the remote sensing. And every month there will be a flyby of the moon. So 2 of Europa, between 12 and 13, something like that for Callisto, and the same for Ganymede. And such a flyby will be very intense in data acquisition. Here I show you an example of the Europa flyby. So here it's Io in the in the back, but then we focus on Europa. A flyby lasts something like 24 hours. And here you see a kind of sequence that we are preparing with the instrument teams. That really takes into account the latest input from the team. We put together a sequence with the field of view. So you see what kind of field of view we have. Most of the instruments will be operating when we are very close to the moons. And then otherwise it will be a mix of remote sensing, in situ, and geophysics instrumentation. And in 24 hours, we'll generate a large amount of data that will take between 2 and 3 months to download. But in the case of Europa, because we are going to perform only 2 flybys, then we take the maximum possible amount of data, even if it takes a lot of time to download on Earth. But that's an example of measurement during the mission. So now some images of the spacecraft to show you the status. If you log into APS-C, I put a video where you can see very shortly a small video of the latest integration sequence in Germany. So you can have a look at the APS-C website. But in any case, here are some images so that were taken last year in Germany. So you see the shape of the spacecraft and the size if you compare with people. So it's really a big spacecraft. So that's the central cylinder of the spacecraft. And at that time, the tank were integrated into this central cylinder. So the propellant will be put inside this kind of tank. And here you see the size of one solar panel. So we have 10 of them. This is that one was a model of the solar panel being tested in the vacuum chamber. Another image, which is more recent. So in fact, every day the spacecraft is being updated because the industry at the moment is working 24 hours per day to meet the tough schedule. So you see again an example of the spacecraft with here the multi-layer installation. So that's the current state of the spacecraft. In terms of challenges, just to give you an overview, this mission is very challenging. To go to Jupiter, it's not easy, of course. So in terms of technical challenges, we have the mission lifetime. So we'll spend 7 to 10 years in cruise, and then 5 years in the Jupiter environment. So it makes a long lifetime. So all the component and the spacecraft has to stay healthy for 15 years or more. The radiation environment is quite tough around Jupiter. So we have special requirements and we take special protections for the spacecraft and the instrument to make sure that they will cope with this radiation environment. Thermal, it's also an issue because at Jupiter it's cold, but during the cruise phase we go via Venus, where it's a hot case for us. So in terms of thermal design, also it's not that easy. Power, it's an issue because we are far from the sun, so we have little power to have all the instrument working and the spacecraft itself. And in terms of EMC, it's electromagnetic compatibility. We have a strong requirement because we want to measure fine values of electric and magnetic fields. So we don't want to be disturbed by the solar panels, the spacecraft. So from that point of view, it's also quite a challenge in terms of design. In terms of operation, it's also very challenging. Navigation, because there will be 2 orbit insertions, one around Jupiter and one around Ganymede. And many flybys, many maneuvers. So in terms of navigation, it's quite heavy and challenging. In terms of planetary protection, we have to follow the rule. That's something we have to deal with that. It's never easy. In particular, we have to show that we will never impact Europa. When we prepare the trajectory, we have to show that even if we lose the spacecraft, it will never go down to Europa. And in terms of power and data rate, we are far from the sun, we are far from Earth. So we can, and all the instruments, they are very demanding in terms of data rate. I mean, every instrument can fill in the daily data rate by itself. So we have 10 instruments on board. It's the same for the power. So we have to make sure we get the best planning in terms of operation, given this constraint. And that it's not an easy task, and we are doing that right now. And in terms of human knowledge management, it's also quite challenging because if you remember the schedule from 2007 to 2035, 36, we have to make sure that the knowledge is preserved, that all the information will be passed to all the generation of scientists and engineers who will work on this mission. And at the end, that there will be an archive which captures everything. So that's also an important part of the mission and an interesting challenge as well. So now in terms of archive, so in fact, that's the first time as I said, that discussed that. So I'm happy to give some feedback later offline. So I think we are doing very well at the moment on that issue, and I would like to thank. I see that Santa is in the list of participants. So I'm working with Santa Martinez on this topic. So we have a data handling and archiving working group at the moment. So we started this year. And we have an archive plan which is well advanced for such a mission, I think, when you consider the timeline. So the first data will be archived not so early. So but it's good to prepare in advance. The idea is to have all the detail agreed with the experiment teams in the coming months. And some of the features of the archive are listed here. So for the instrument, we have some, I would say, standard data product, but we'll make sure that we get as much higher level data as possible, because it's good to have the raw data, the calibrated data, but it's also very useful for the scientific community to get as much higher level data as possible. And on previous mission, we have seen that we are missing some of them. There will be special data like accelerometer data on board that will be useful for gravity data. The trajectory will be also the reconstructed trajectory will be available. It's also a special feature thanks to the radio science team that will make a lot of effort to have the most precise trajectory. And with such a trajectory, we can do great science like a gravity experiment. There is a radiation monitor data that we will also we are going to prepare the archive. I think it's an important sensor as well. The navigation camera as well, like on Rosetta. I think that was a good example of camera which we are not in principle used for science of outreach. They are used to navigate, but the value in terms of outreach and science is also quite interesting. So we'll make sure that they are also in the archive. The housekeeping data is something that is very difficult to find usually in planetary mission. Usually, it's difficult, I would say impossible to find. And now, for example, if I give an example, in the case of Rosetta, a selection is just available on the planetary data at ESAC. And we'll make sure for JUICE that we put the most useful housekeeping data as well, because we can do some interesting science with that. The navigation data is also something relatively new in the area of planetary mission. So that's the data that you get out of if you process the telecommunication signal. So for example, the Doppler information, the range information, And that gives you the engineer at ESOC, they use this data to navigate, so to know the position, the speed of the spacecraft. But you can use also this data to compute the precise trajectory, and also to get updated ephemeris of bodies like Jupiter, the Moon. So there is a scientific value behind that. The community which is able to process the data is relatively small, but there are always some people, colleagues, who would like to have access to this data, because if you have a mission which is 15 years long, it's very interesting to have this very long duration data set, because you can do very useful science. And usually people that don't know where to find this data, they are stored in, I would say, very secret server in ESA, and it's very difficult for the community to have access to that if you are not in the original radio science team. So here I wanted to make a special effort to make sure that this navigation data, they will be available also for the community. We plan to archive not only the nominal phase but also the cruise phase. The goal is to perform some measurement. We collaborate with NASA, of course, and there is a proprietary period of 6 months. Now there is also an interesting study that we are considering at the moment with some postdoc. And that it's really a concept. So here again, if you have any feedback, ideas now offline, I'm happy to get some feedback, because it's really something we started this year, and we will see how we progress on this topic. So the motivation is the following. Of course, the data will be archived in the Planetary Science Archive and in the PDS. I think that's the baseline, the requirement. Here it's all clear. But when you know that when you want to perform data analysis, you need not only the data, but you need other kind of information. For example, obviously, you need the spacecraft trajectory and attitude. You need some information on the instrument, the 3D model, the field of view, spacecraft technical details, how the spacecraft is charged. If you want to study plasma data, you want to use the most relevant models, magnetic field, atmosphere, because sometimes the data analysis needs the use of models to process and interpret the data. You need some tools in terms of analysis, processing, visualization, which sometimes are easy to find, but sometimes are not. And sometimes the experiment team, they don't always share all their tools, because they develop them so that they don't see the need to provide that to everybody, which we can understand. You need also to compare with data from other missions, and sometimes you don't know where to find them, you don't know they exist. And you need also some other information, like, for example, spectroscopic database if you analyze submillimeter wave or infrared or visible spectrum. You need some, for example, cross-section if you study the interaction between energetic particles and an atmosphere, etc., etc. And all these databases are not also easy to find. So the idea that we are studying with some postdoc is to prepare a web page giving access to all this set of information, and to include other databases if they are not easy to find. And then such that for end users of the future JUICE data, you can get all the necessary information, and even information the person who are not looking at before, just to make sure that the person exploit best all the data. So that's the concept. And we start now, and we'll see where we go from that. So I even did not talk about that to anybody. So you are even the first outside ESA to get this information about what we are doing. But I thought, given the topic of this talk, I thought I would share the information with you. And that's an example of the concept. So there will be a web page. Here it's only an example where you have first you can get information on where is JUICE, distance to Jupiter, etc. Basic information on the position. But then there will be an entry on mission, everything you want to know about the mission, about the spacecraft, including the instrument, so that we can have the link to the instrument web page also. The science, so yeah, that will include the data, but also all the other information, such as tools, databases, etc., multimedia for all the images of the spacecraft, and we are already collecting the images of integration instrument to put that under this item. News, because we'll share all the news of the mission, education outreach for this particular activity, and we will envisage also to have some forums to discuss specific topics. Here, we will see it's just an idea, and we will have to think more about it. And this is how this page could look like. But that's just an example. And to conclude, because I think I already took too much of the time. So if you want more information, there are some websites on the ESA server. So some for the general public, for the scientific community. This one, cosmos.esa.int, it's more for the geoscientific community. So you get information on the trajectory, detail, the plot, etc. We launched a NISA Twitter account in July, so you can follow that also via this channel. We are doing a documentary on the making of JUICE, so that will include movies of the integration of the spacecraft and of the instrument. And we have released this episode 1 that you can find on this URL. And in any case, if you have any questions, you can always ask me. You have this my email address. And with that, I'll thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.